Our last speaker this morning is going to be Mr. Jack Warren. Everybody, let's welcome Jack.
So I want to just say sharply that I'm honored to be asked to do this today. There are two groups of people here. Those that have heard me speak before and those who have not. The ones that were clapping have not. So I want to share with you this morning my testimony. And I had somewhat of a road to Damascus moment. For those of you that know what a road to Damascus moment is, it's a time where you just have a radical change in your insight of what you believe in. And for me, well, if you remember, Saul was walking to the road to Damascus, and God shined a light down on him, and it blinded him for 3 days, right? And he recognized the presence of God and said, God, what do you want me to do? And he said, quit persecuting my people, right? So, as you know now, his name was changed to Paul, so he had this dramatic change in his life, and that's something very similar to me, and I want to share that with y'all this morning. So, I guess I'll start off by saying I grew up in a family who we were 3-day-a-weekers, right? Everybody knows what that is. You go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday. We didn't have a choice. Like my mom made me go to church, but I enjoyed it, and I loved going there. And at age 12, I was baptized. I come to understand that I needed to make a dramatic change in my life, and I was baptized in a church there in Cordell. Now I'm gonna fast forward to 2014. I had visited a few different churches, become members of a few different churches. In 2014, I was sitting in a Sunday school class at a church there in Cordell, and one of the guys in our Sunday school class, Sunday school class, was talking about Kairos prison ministry. For those of you that may be familiar with that. And they were talking about Kairos and what that looked like, and asking for volunteers. And before I even thought about it, I raised my hand and said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." I did not know what it entailed doing Kairos at the time. Well, I probably would have kept my hand down. But I'm glad that it did. So it rolled around. We had our first Saturday meeting. I didn't realize how many meetings we actually done before you go into the prison when I stuck my hand up, but I was going to make good on my word because I said I was going to do it. We got in there, and one of the things that we do in Kairos is you go around and you make sure that you introduce yourself while you're there, right? You want to go in and be a brotherhood of people that you don't want to go in there like a bunch of strangers. So you spend a lot of time with each other, getting to know one another. And this one particular day, my first time in there, I heard this man get up and introduce himself. I'll tell you, his name was Ronnie. And Ronnie stood up and he introduced himself, and he said that he was a disciple. And I thought to myself, oh, this guy has got some kind of nerve, right? So you've all seen the flyers. They have these religious rallies. You've got bishops and all kind of stuff that people, apostles that call themselves. But this man here was calling himself a disciple. And I thought, well, he's got a lot of nerve saying that. Myself at the time, I did not know what a disciple was. But the more I heard this man talk, the more I realized that God was using this man's mouth to talk to me. Right? I don't know if he was talking to anybody else, but I knew for a fact he was talking to me. What this guy said, Ronnie, said that the modern day church done a really good job of making converts, not so much as making disciples. Right? Take people in, come to the front, join the church, find you a nice place to sit, get you a 9x13 casserole dish with a gourd bacon, right? But not make disciples out of it. And I knew as I was sitting there listening to this guy talk, I wanted to get me some of that discipleship. So after the meeting was over, I went up to him. The first time I've ever seen this man in my entire life, and I said, "Hey, I heard you mention about discipleship, and I want to get you some of it. And let me tell you, in my life, I need it more then than ever." So he told me that he was going to pray about it, which I didn't understand. I was like, well, he just made this big sale about this discipleship thing. Here I am trying to do business with him, and he's having to pray about it. Needless to say, he called me back 2 days later. He said, "Yeah, I'd be more than glad to take time to disciple with you." And I said, "Okay, what day?" He said, "Well, I can't do Tuesday because I got 2 people that day." And it's just like every day he had somebody he was discipling, which I understand now why he had to pray about it. But we picked out a day. It was Tuesday, I don't remember the exact date, right the second, standing here in front of everybody. But we met, Chick-fil-A, 6 o'clock. I got there, I see this man with his Bible standing there open, and he's reading God's Word. So I go in there and I sit in front of him, I got to talking to him, and going through these, just kind of making small talk. And he asked me, as we began to get started, he said, well, Jack, what's your story? Okay, well, I happen to be something I know a little something about myself, right? So I started talking to him about all the wonderful things I'd achieved, about me about going through college and starting my career, my business, and then starting a career where I'm working and all these great things. And he's like, oh, that's great, that's great. And he said, Jack, are you saved? And I said, yes, sir. I was baptized at 12 years old. I've not long, I just told you that. Okay, cool. He said, well, what's your story? Well, clearly my career and stuff is not what he wanted to know about. So I started to talk more about growing up in the church, as far as I shared with you. I started going to church. I'm not sure how old I was, but I remember a picture of a friend of mine there at church and me standing out in front. I had more teeth missing than I had in my head, so I know I was a little tight. And that I was baptized at 12 years old, and I had continued to go to church and just kind of lead him up, talking about religion more or less than anything. When I got done, he asked me one more time. He said, are you saved? At this point in time, I didn't know this guy. Who is he to ask me if I'm saved or not, right? He wasn't insinuating anything, but he wanted me to answer that question. I said, yes, I've already told you. At this point, I'm ready to leave him sitting there. Grab me a chick deluxe sandwich and get out of there, leave him there reading the Bible, because he kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. So he asked me again, he said, Jack, what's your story? And I said, Ronnie, what do you want from me? I said, I've already told you about my work career. I've told you about my education, my family. He said, what do you want to know? He said, I want to know your story with God. Guess what? I didn't have near as much to talk about as I did with other stuff. So he asked me to open my Bible, 1 John 1, chapter 1. And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. I know we're used to having the words on the board in front of us, but we don't today. But it's the black book in front of you. So grab it. 1 John chapter 1, verse 1. Send it back to your Bible there. And we're going to read the words that I read to help me get to be where I'm at. 1 John chapter 1, verse 1. I'm going to read it for you. That which was from the beginning. I started reading out loud. He stopped me right there. He said, who's he talking about? That which was from the beginning. I'm going to ask you, who's John talking about? That which was from the beginning. This is interactive. Somebody talk to me. Who is that which was from the beginning? God. My initial thoughts as well. Tell me to continue reading. Which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and our hands have touched. This concerns the word of life. Who's he talking about now? Jesus, right? Nobody has seen or touched God, but he's talking about Jesus. The light was made manifest, and we have seen it and testify to it and proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and made manifest to us, right? So that's Jesus coming to us. This is John proclaiming this to us, to the other disciples, that which we have seen, which we have heard, we also proclaim to you, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And we're writing these things to you to make our joy complete. And he would stop me. I'd read a piece and he would stop me. What's it say? What do you hear? Right? So many people, when they read the Bible, they'll read a chapter of the Bible and put it to the side and reflect on it. Right? For some people that may work. For me, that does not work. It's like getting an instruction manual for putting that entertainment center together and read it from start to finish and then set it down and put it together. That don't work real good. Not for me anyway. And I often tell people reading the Bible is like eating a pizza. You don't just read through the whole Bible. You don't eat a whole pizza, right? You cut your pizza into slices. Then you don't stick a whole pizza, a slice in your mouth, do you? You take a bite and you chew it up. And then you take another bite and you chew it up. And that's exactly what Ronnie was doing to me this day here at Chick-fil-A as we were reading through here. The next part, starting in verse 5, where it talks about walking in the light. This is where it got real for me. This is the message we have heard from him and proclaimed to you. Who's the him John referred to? Jesus, right? That God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say we fellowship with him while we walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of his son Jesus cleanses us from all sins. And he asked me, he said, Jack, stop me there. Like you do it all the time. Do you walk in darkness? And I thought about it. I did. So what's walking in darkness? We need to address what it is. What is walking in darkness? Right? Walking in darkness, as I understand it, is willfully choosing to live in sin. Any sin. I was doing that. At that time, I was doing that. I was willfully participating in something that I knew to be sinful, and yet still continue to do it. And based on what I'm reading right here, this does one thing: separate me from God. If we say we have no sin, starting at verse 8, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. We confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us for our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say we have not sinned, we make him out to be a liar, and the word is not in us. And I looked over at him and I said, I'm not saved. He said, only you can decide that. He said, that's between you and God, and I'm not him. I said, Ronnie, can you help me? He said, Jack, I can't say the only God can do that through Jesus Christ. He said, but if you're asking me if I can hold your hand and you pray to God and ask him to come into your life and reign over it, that I can do. And I said, Ronnie, I want to do it. I want to do it right this second. We held hands. I asked God to come into my life and reign over me. And for me, it was just the clearest, plainest thing I had ever seen in my entire life. It was so crystal clear to me. Right? Why? Because I was no longer walking in darkness. There was a feeling that came over me that I just cannot explain. Words cannot explain it. And I said, Ronnie, I want to be baptized. He said, Jack, that's great. That's great. Did you want to do that? He said, you can get with your pastor. And I said, whoa. I don't think you understand. I want to be baptized right now. He got saying, well. I said, no, they go well. I said, we're going to my house. I want you to baptize me right now. So we did. He didn't know where I lived. This is the first conversation I ever had with this man other than the Saturday before. And I got in my truck. He was going to follow me, and I went just slow enough that he would know where to turn. I was watching him from rearview mirror. I was ready to get home and get in that swimming pool and get myself baptized. We got there. He baptized me, and I had this feeling come over me that I just had so many people to tell because I had found this wonderful, wonderful gift. And I knew that I had lots of people in my life that were good people, would do anything in the world for you, the kind of people that you call in the middle of the night when you're tired to come get you, that loved the Lord, sit in church, but guess what? Was going to hell just like I was the day before. And there was an urgency to come over me to share this message. That day in particular, I went into everybody's house that would let me come talk to them, which this lady today was only 3. God used me to lead 2 other people to him that night and baptize them that same day. One of the guys I took to my dad's house because he had the closest. I went to his house, I shared with him. His wife thought I was on the sauce again. She don't know what I was thinking being at his house so late, but it was urgent, right? It was urgent. There was nothing more urgent than that to me at that time than to share this message with this guy. And he heard it, right? He didn't hear me, he didn't hear what I said. I slowed him down and let God speak to him. He wanted to be baptized too. I took him to my daddy's house. I said, Daddy, I want to baptize this guy at your house. And my dad was thinking, what are you talking about? Took him over there, we baptized the guy, and he got out, and he's a real charismatic guy. And he was just kind of walking around, kind of like this a little bit. Daddy said, "What's wrong with him?" I said, "He can see for the first time in his whole adult life, he can see." And it was the most amazing, profound thing you could ever imagine, being part of that. And I'm so thankful that God has used me to do that. So what I want to ask of you today is to ask yourself some questions. Do you have a story? Do you have you don't have to be like my story, but do you have a story? Is there a finite time in your life that you can go back to and say, this is where it happened, right? Coming to church your whole life does not make you a Christian. I've done an awful lot of standing around in a garage, but let me tell you something. I'm no car. Sitting in this church does not make you a Christian. It is having a relationship with Jesus and the Father. So I'm going to ask Tanya, Mr. Tom, if you'll come up with me, the music team. So, as I said, I want you to question, have you had that moment in your life? Can you go and tell us when it was? Do you have a story? Do you have something to share with other people? Are you sharing? Are you sharing that with other people? Once you find something so wonderful, so abundant, how can you not give it away? Right? If you were to go, and I hate to monetize it, but I am, if you were to find a fountain that flowed with gold that there was no end to, would you not want to tell everybody you know about it? Would you not? If you're not, do you know where that fountain of gold is? I'm going to close by saying, if you don't feel like you've had that moment, if you don't feel like you've had something to share, if this message that God has placed in my heart has made you feel the least bit uncomfortable, or you feel like there may be something in your life that you need to pray about, or if you'd like to join this group of believers, we set aside time in the service to do just that. We're going to go and we're going to be out front. If anybody would like to come talk, come pray, Brian will be here. This is the time to do that.